What's one family saying or phrase you heard growing up that still sticks with you?
You don't forget the moment when something breaks, not physically, not with sound, but something inside you. You feel it, like a sharp shift in gravity. And after that, there's just before and after. For me, that moment was a voicemail. It was a nurse, her voice calm but tired, saying that Ava, my best friend's 11-year-old daughter, had been brought into the ICU after a seizure. She asked if I could come in because the emergency contacts weren't answering. I sat there frozen for a second, like my brain was trying to catch up. I wasn't her mom. I wasn't even listed on the paperwork, not officially. But I was the one they called because I always picked up. And the thing is, I knew where Lauren was. I knew she was in Mexico with her new boyfriend, the one with the teeth too white and the phone always face down. I knew she was poolside, probably on her third margarita, posting filtered selfies with captions like, "Finally finding my peace." But I still thought she'd come back. You hear ICU, your kid, you get on a plane. No question. That's what I thought. That's what I would have done. That's what anyone would do, right? So I called her. Twice. No answer. I texted her, "Emergency. Ava's in the ICU. Call me." 2 hours later, I get a message back, "OMG. What happened?" "I'm at the spa. Can I call in like an hour?" An hour? I just stared at my phone like maybe I had misread it. Maybe she meant an hour ago. Maybe she'd already booked a flight and was halfway to the airport. But no, she meant it. She was getting a hot stone massage while her kid was unconscious in a hospital bed. I didn't know what to say. So I just did what needed to be done. I picked up Ava's stuffed bear from my house, drove to the hospital, and signed in. When I saw her in that bed, pale and hooked up to machines, my heart dropped into my stomach. She looked so small. Too small. I held her hand, and when she woke up, the first thing she said was, "Is Mom mad?" Not, "Where's Mom?" Not, "Am I okay?" She wanted to know if Lauren was mad. I said, "Why would she be mad?" And Ava, this little girl who's been through more than most adults, she looked at me and whispered, because I told her I didn't feel good before she left. She said not to call unless it was actually serious. I thought I might die, but I didn't want to mess up her trip. I swear to God, my chest actually hurt hearing that. And in that moment, something in me changed. I didn't say anything bad about Lauren to her kid. I didn't blow up. I just stroked her hair and told her she did the right thing by telling the nurse to call me. But inside, I was seething. Like, red hot. And not because Lauren had made a mistake. Mistakes happen. We're moms, not superheroes. But this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. This was neglect dressed up in hashtags and room service. I sent Lauren another text later that night. "She's stable. Out of immediate danger. You need to come home." Her reply? "We'll try to move flight up. Might be expensive. Keep me posted." And then, 30 minutes later, she posted a photo on her Instagram story. A beach sunset. Caption, "Healing in paradise." I screenshotted it. I didn't even know why. Something in me just said, "Save this. You're gonna need it." I stayed overnight in the hospital room. Slept in a chair that creaked every time I moved. The nurses brought me bad coffee and warm blankets and thanked me for being there. They thought I was Ava's aunt or something. And I let them think that. Because saying, "I'm just her mom's best friend, and apparently the only one who gives a damn," felt too complicated. By the second day, Ava was asking to come home with me. Not her mom. Me. I called Lauren again. Told her daughter was being discharged, and I could either bring her to Lauren's house, which was locked and empty, or take her home with me. She said, "Just keep her for now. I'll be back Sunday." It was Wednesday. That's when I started to take notes. I'm not talking about petty stuff. Not gossip. I mean dates, times, screenshots, Ava's comments, things said on calls. I didn't plan it. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But I felt something in my gut. Something that told me this wasn't the last time Lauren was going to choose herself over her kid. And I wasn't gonna let Ava fall through the cracks again. Because this little girl had already learned how to pretend she was okay, and that's the kind of thing you only learn when nobody's coming. 3 days later, Lauren finally flew back, tanned, glowing, holding a souvenir bag from duty-free, and the first thing she said to me wasn't, "Thank you," or, "How's my daughter?" It was, "Did you have to make it so dramatic?" That's when I knew. This wasn't just a bad week. This was who she really was. And she had no idea who she'd just underestimated. I didn't say anything right away when Lauren threw that little dig about me, making it dramatic. I just stood there in the doorway of my own house, holding a bag of groceries in one hand and watching her set down her duty-free crap on the kitchen table like she was coming back from a spa weekend, not walking into a situation where her kid had almost died. She didn't even go straight to Ava. Just dropped her luggage, pulled out some little bottle of perfume, and said, "Look what I brought her." Cute, right? I looked at her, and all I could think was, you think a bottle of cheap perfume makes up for what you did? You think this kid needs souvenirs? But I didn't say that. Not yet. I didn't want to start a war in my own living room with Ava in the next room. So I said, "She's in her room. Sleeping. She had a rough night." And Lauren just went, "Oh. Okay. I'll see her later. I need a shower and, like, a real meal." That was the moment I stopped seeing her as a friend. I mean, the line had been shifting all week, but that right there? That snapped it clean. I still let her stay. I still kept my voice calm. But something in me went quiet in that scary, focused way. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But I knew this wasn't going to slide. That night, I stayed up late going through old texts. Every time Ava had been dropped off at my place last minute. Every time Lauren had gone off on some trip with a new guy and forgotten to check in. The missed pickups. The way Ava had flinched once when Lauren raised her voice too fast. I didn't want to see it all laid out like that, but I needed to. I needed to see the pattern, not just the moment. And it was all there. She'd been slowly backing out of parenting for years, like a guest who keeps inching toward the door hoping nobody notices she's leaving early. 2 days after she got back, Lauren told me she'd talked to her lawyer. She said, "I don't want any confusion going forward. I'm Ava's mom. I appreciate everything, but I think it's best if we keep boundaries. You know? Just to avoid misunderstandings." And I just sat there, holding my coffee, staring at her like, is this real? She was laying the groundwork, making it clear I was just the friend. That's when I knew I had to start being very careful. I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I said, "Sure. Whatever you think's best." But I started writing everything down. And here's the thing. I didn't plan on going to court. That wasn't my goal. I just wanted Ava to be safe. But then Lauren pushed it too far. One night, maybe a week later, I got a call from Ava. Whispering. She was home alone. Lauren had left for the night. Told Ava she was going out for a quick drink. That was 6 hours earlier. I said, "Where are you?" And she told me she was in the bathroom with the lights off because someone knocked on the door and it scared her. I was in my car before she even hung up. I didn't text Lauren. I didn't ask. I drove straight there and brought Ava back to my house. The next morning, Lauren showed up screaming. She accused me of kidnapping her daughter. She actually used that word. Kidnapping. I told her, "Your daughter called me crying because you left her alone overnight." And Lauren said, "I'll never forget this," she said. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I've done that before and she was fine." That's when I knew. I had to go legal. There was no reasoning with her anymore. She thought this was about control. She thought I wanted Ava like some kind of prize. But I didn't want her. I just wasn't going to stand by and let her get damaged more than she already had. That week, I went to see a lawyer. I brought everything. The messages, the screenshots, the timestamps, the call logs, the hospital papers. I even printed out Ava's school attendance record, where she'd missed over 15 days in the last 3 months Lauren had custody. My lawyer looked at the binder I handed over and said, "This isn't petty. This is a pattern. And the court's going to care." I felt sick. Like I was betraying someone, not just Lauren, but the version of her I used to believe in. The one who cried when Ava was born. The one who used to call me at midnight just to vent about diaper blowouts and teething. That version was gone. Or maybe she never really existed. Maybe I just filled in the blanks because I wanted her to be that person. I filed the paperwork. And 2 days later, I got a message from Lauren. Not a call. Just a short, cold message. You're gonna regret this. You think you're the hero. You're not. Stay away from my family. I stared at that message for a long time. And then I added it to the folder. Because I had stopped hoping she'd change. Now I was just preparing to make sure I'd never have to hope again. And what she didn't know was, the judge. The judge was about to read every single word. Let me know when you're ready for episode 3. It only gets better from here. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who keeps a file on someone. It always sounded obsessive or paranoid, like something people do when they've lost touch with reality, or they've got too much time and bitterness on their hands. But when it's a child's life on the line, when you watch a little girl flinch every time her mom's name lights up her phone, you stop caring how it looks, and you start caring about having proof. Because feelings don't hold up in court. Proof does. And Lauren, whether she realized it or not, was handing me plenty. It started small, just little notes I jotted in my phone. Timestamps. Days Lauren forgot school pickup or canceled weekends last minute. Comments Ava made in passing that didn't sit right, like how she kept an extra granola bar under her pillow because sometimes mom sleeps through dinner. Or how she never really knew when her mom would be home, just that the house feels quiet when she's not yelling. I kept everything. Quietly. No drama. I wasn't trying to start a war, I just needed a record, something real. I took screenshots of texts. Took photos of the wine bottles in the passenger seat when I picked Ava up. Recorded one conversation, just one, where Lauren, on speakerphone, told Ava she needed to grow up and stop acting like a victim because Ava had called to say she was scared being alone at night. That one hurt to listen back to. And I hated that I recorded it. But I knew what I was doing wasn't just about protecting Ava, it was about making sure I couldn't be gaslit later, or turned into the bad guy when Lauren finally realized I wasn't playing the friend role anymore. Ava, meanwhile, kept slipping into calling me mom without noticing. The first time it happened, she froze and corrected herself so fast, I thought she'd seen a ghost. But by the third or fourth time, she stopped apologizing. She'd just say it and keep talking, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I'll admit, part of me swelled up with something close to pride. But another part of me ached, because I knew no kid should have to make that shift on their own. What really pushed things forward wasn't Lauren's neglect, it was her arrogance. She started acting like I owed her something. Like all the times I watched Ava, all the rides, all the late-night pickups, were part of some unspoken agreement we had. Like I was the free backup plan she'd always had in her back pocket, and now she was done pretending to be grateful. One night, she showed up at my house drunk. Not falling down drunk, but the kind where her voice got slippery, like she thought she was being clever when she wasn't. She looked me in the eye and said, "You're not her mom. Don't get it twisted." And then she laughed and said she'd be filing for full custody soon, just to make things simple. That was the night I opened a physical notebook. I stopped trusting my phone. I wanted paper. I wanted ink. Something solid. I started every entry the same way, the date, the time, where Ava was, and who was supposed to be watching her. I treated it like a job, because in some twisted way, it had become one. I wasn't just a friend helping out anymore. I was documenting a child's reality so that, one day, someone with actual authority would believe me. Weeks passed like that. Ava spent more time at my house than her own. Lauren stopped pretending to care how often she showed up. She was deep into this relationship with that guy from Miami, the one who posted more shirtless photos than a teenager on spring break. I heard from neighbors that they'd been gone for days at a time. Ava started asking if she could stay, just one more night, and I stopped pretending it was temporary. Then, one evening, I got a knock on the door. It was Lauren's cousin, Rachel. We weren't close, but we'd always been polite. She looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot like she had something stuck in her shoe. She said, "Look, I know it's not my place, but I just thought you should know Lauren's telling people you're trying to steal Ava. That you're obsessed. That you're jealous because she's finally happy." I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there and stared at Rachel until she said, "I don't believe it. I know Ava's safer here. I just wanted to warn you." She's gearing up for something. I thanked her, closed the door, and sat down with my notebook. I flipped through the pages, rereading everything I'd written. I felt cold. Not scared. Just clear. Like all the doubt had drained out of me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't obsessed. I was ready. I made an appointment with a family lawyer the next morning. I brought the notebook, the photos, the texts, the screenshots, the recording, everything. And I said, I don't want to take this child from her mother. But I'm not going to sit back and watch her get hurt just because no one else has the spine to step in. The lawyer flipped through a few pages and looked at me in a way that made me feel both validated and heartbroken. She said, this isn't going to be easy, but we can do it. And frankly, we should. That night, I told Ava there might be some changes coming. I didn't explain everything, just that grown-ups were going to be talking soon, and it wasn't her fault, and no matter what happened, she wasn't going to be left alone again. She nodded. Quiet, but steady. And then she asked if she could sleep in my room that night. Just for a little while. I didn't even answer. I just moved over and held the blanket up for her. The court date was set. And Lauren still had no idea what was coming. Because while she was busy pretending I was the enemy, I'd been doing something she never expected. Paying attention. Taking notes. And building the case that was about to change everything. Let me know when you're ready to continue to episode 4. Things are about to break wide open. When the court papers were finally filed and the hearing was scheduled, I remember sitting in my car outside the courthouse for nearly 20 minutes, just staring at the front doors like they were the gates to something irreversible. Something final that I couldn't unchoose once I stepped through, even if I wanted to. I wasn't nervous about the judge or about what I had to say, not really, because I knew the truth was on paper, right there in that binder sitting on the passenger seat, a heavy, inch-thick collection of moments that individually might have seemed forgivable, forgettable even, but lined up in a row like that, painted a picture of a child slowly being abandoned by the one person who was supposed to protect her above all else. What I was nervous about was what would happen afterward, the ripple, the wreckage, the final break between me and the woman I once called my sister, who had stood beside me through my divorce, who brought me soup when my mother died, who once said she'd take Ava and raise her herself if anything ever happened to me. And now here I was, doing what she swore she would have done for me, stepping in, stepping up, refusing to look the other way while her daughter slipped into the kind of silence that doesn't come from being shy, but from being let down too many times by people who say they love you. The courtroom itself was small, almost underwhelming in size and appearance, which made everything feel more intimate, like a family meeting with consequences. Lauren sat across the aisle from me, flanked by her new attorney, a man who looked slick but disinterested, like someone who took this case because it was easy money, because he believed, as Lauren probably told him, that this was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by an over-involved friend who didn't know her place. She wouldn't look at me at first, just stared straight ahead with this tight expression on her face, the kind she used to get when someone called her out on something she knew was true but refused to admit. When the judge walked in, everything shifted. Judge Cleary wasn't warm, not like you'd expect in family court where children are involved. She was stern, quiet, and she didn't waste time. She reviewed the basic claims, looked through Ava's school reports, asked a few clarifying questions, and then turned her attention to my lawyer, who stood and said, as calmly as if he were reciting a grocery list, "We've submitted a binder of documented instances spanning 11 months that, taken together, demonstrate a sustained pattern of neglect, inconsistent caregiving, and a failure to prioritize the child's physical and emotional safety." That binder. That's what did it. That binder, with the screenshots, the timestamps, the quotes, the audio file, the handwritten notes, and the annotated calendar entries, it told the story without drama, without interpretation. It just laid the facts out in black and white, and when Judge Cleary flipped through those pages, page after page, her eyes didn't widen and she didn't make any big facial expressions, but I could see it, I could feel it. She was registering it all. There was no twisting this. No explaining away. No pretending it wasn't what it clearly was. Lauren finally spoke when she realized the tone had shifted. She went into this long, rambling monologue about how hard single motherhood is, about how Ava was a sensitive child, and I was overstepping and manipulating the situation to look like a hero. She said, "This is just a friendship gone sour. Jenna's bitter because I stopped calling as much. She's overreaching." And then she cried, or tried to, and looked at me like I was supposed to crack, like I was supposed to remember the good times and call it off and say, "It's fine, forget it." But I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I kept my eyes forward, because what she didn't realize was that I hadn't come here for revenge. I came here for Ava. And that meant I didn't care if Lauren hated me for the rest of her life, because the truth was, if hating me made her feel better about what she'd done, she was welcome to it. When Judge Cleary gave her ruling, she didn't raise her voice or make a speech. She just said, "Primary custody will be transferred immediately to the petitioner, effective today. The child will remain in her care and home for the foreseeable future." And just like that, the room fell silent, heavy, loaded, final. Lauren didn't shout. She didn't cry again. She just sat there, stunned, and when she finally looked at me, her eyes weren't angry. They were cold. Empty. Like someone who couldn't believe they'd lost something they never thought they had to fight for. She whispered, almost under her breath, "You stole her." And I said, flatly, without emotion, "No. You gave her away." Ava was waiting outside the courtroom with a caseworker. When she saw me come out, she didn't smile. She didn't run to me. She just walked over slowly and held out her hand like she'd been holding her breath the whole time and could finally exhale. I took it, and we walked out of the courthouse like it was any other errand, like we'd gone to pick up groceries or renew a license, because for Ava, this was just another moment of surviving the fallout of someone else's choices. Later that night, after she was asleep, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the file, now closed and sealed in a cabinet. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt like I'd won. But it didn't feel like a win. It felt like cleaning up a mess someone else never took responsibility for. It felt like protecting something fragile from someone who'd never deserved to break it in the first place. And as I turned off the light and climbed into bed, I told myself that it was over, that this chapter was done, that Lauren was out of our lives for good. But deep down, I knew better. Because people like her, they don't just disappear. And sure enough, I was right. Let me know when you're ready for episode 5, the ending you won't see coming. It had been a little over 3 months since the court decision, and in many ways, life had started to settle into something that almost resembled normal, not the kind of normal you daydream about when you're 20 and hopeful, but the kind that feels earned. Stitched together from fragments of chaos and long nights and hard choices that no one ever wants to make, and yet here you are, somehow still standing, still drinking your morning coffee, still packing school lunches like you've always done it, even though everything around you changed without asking for permission. Ava was different, too, not overnight, not dramatically, but in these quiet, almost imperceptible ways that only someone who really watched her would notice. She no longer flinched when the doorbell rang. She stopped checking her phone every hour like she was waiting for a message that would never come, and she slept deeper, longer, the kind of sleep that kids are supposed to have when they feel safe. Like the world is predictable and someone is actually in charge. She still asked about her mom sometimes, but not with anger, not even with sadness. It was more like curiosity, like someone remembering a movie they saw a long time ago but can't quite place the ending to. I didn't speak Lauren's name unless Ava brought it up first, and even then, I kept my words simple and neutral, not because I was trying to protect Lauren, but because I wanted Ava to know that her experiences were real, that I didn't need to rewrite the past to make it easier for either of us to live with it. I had no intention of poisoning her against her own mother. Lauren had done that job herself with a precision I couldn't have matched if I tried. What I focused on was presence, showing up, being there, consistency, things Lauren always treated like optional features of parenting, like upgrades you could pay extra for instead of basic requirements. For the first time in a long while, I started to believe that maybe we were okay. Not healed, not whole, That would take years, maybe a lifetime, but okay enough to breathe, to laugh again, to believe in birthdays and pizza nights and movie marathons without the tension of wondering if everything was about to unravel again. I had started a new binder, too, not full of notes or evidence, but of Ava's artwork, school projects, progress reports, moments of joy that reminded me why I had fought so hard in the first place. It felt like I could finally let my shoulders drop a little. And then, one morning, I saw the car. It wasn't anything special. Just a beat-up sedan parked halfway down the block, not even in front of our house, but off to the side like it was trying not to be noticed. Except I did notice it, not because it stood out, but because I've lived on this street for over 12 years and I know who parks where and when, and that car had never been there before. The first day, I brushed it off. Maybe someone visiting a neighbor. But then it came back the next day. And the day after that. Always the same time. Early morning. Engine off. Just sitting. It wasn't until the fourth morning that I got close enough to see inside. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was just walking the dog, taking the long loop like I always do. But when I passed that car and happened to glance sideways, I saw her. Blonde wig. Big sunglasses. Head turned just enough that I couldn't see her eyes, but I didn't need to, I knew it was Lauren. There's a way people carry themselves, even in hiding, that can't be faked. The posture, the shape of the jaw, the tension in the hands gripping the steering wheel, it was her. And she saw me too. I could feel it. But she didn't move, didn't start the engine, didn't even flinch. I kept walking. My heart was pounding, not because I was afraid, not exactly, but because it confirmed something I had hoped wasn't true. She hadn't disappeared. She was just waiting, watching, maybe hoping I'd slip up, maybe thinking she could find some crack to crawl back through. And I knew I had to make a choice. I didn't call the police. I didn't text her. I didn't even tell Ava. What I did was walk straight home, open my old binder, and pull out a fresh sheet. I wrote the date, the time, and then 5 words. Parked car again. Looks like her. Because the truth is, Lauren was never the type to go quietly. She didn't believe in consequences, not really. She believed in optics, in manipulation, in rewriting the story, so she came out looking misunderstood rather than accountable. And now, stripped of her image, with no courtroom platform, no attorney spinning her side of things, she had only one tactic left, to haunt us from the sidelines, to sit in that car and remind me that some people will never accept that they lost. That afternoon, I got a voice message from an unknown number. No name, no location. Just her voice, low and bitter. You think you won? You didn't. You never had any real friends. That's why you're so good at stealing mine. I didn't respond. I just hit delete, closed my laptop, and walked into the kitchen where Ava was working on a science project, her brows furrowed in concentration. She looked up and smiled, and in that moment, everything else, the car, the wig, the message, fell away. Because the truth is, I didn't steal anything. I didn't steal Ava. I just stayed when her mother left. And if Lauren wanted to sit in her car for the rest of the year, hiding behind wigs and tinted windows, grasping at a narrative that made her feel less like a failure and more like a victim, that was her choice. But Ava was home, and I wasn't going anywhere. And whatever Lauren thought she still had left, she'd already lost it the moment she put herself on that beach instead of on a plane. Let her sit and watch. That's all she'll ever do now.